Palantir.
Palantir.
Palantir. Palantir.
Retail investors are buying their stock left, right, and center.
They have a charismatic CEO that says fun, controversial things on camera.
Well, I love the idea of getting a drone and having light fentanyl-laced urine spraying on analysts who tried to screw us.
No one really understands what Palantir does. It can be anything for anyone.
Is the playbook for a founder just go make the most outlandish statements possible, and it doesn't really matter if you're right or wrong?
Is Alex Karp the biggest liar in the history of tech?
I had 23 people come up to me that mentioned top line last
23?
week. 23? I counted. 23 people mentioned top line.
Counted because someone's yelling at you. Why are we doing this? This is so stupid.
And I saw that
23 people said hi to me at the booth. That's attribution.
Attribution is lead scoring.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Top Line. It's Sam Jacobs. I'm the CEO Pavilion. I'm joined by my incredible co-host, Asad Zaman, the CEO of sales talent agency STA, and AJ Bruno, the CEO and co-founder of QuotaPath. And today we have an incredible docket. We're going to talk about Palantir. What do they do? Why are they worth almost $400 billion? Do they really not have salespeople? Meanwhile, public SaaS earnings are showing many SaaS-era companies accelerating because of AI. But Salesforce isn't. What does this tell us about the future of go-to-market tech? And making bold predictions. Does it even matter if you're wrong? What kind of bold predictions? Any kind of bold prediction. You can predict that the world's going to end tomorrow. Does it matter that you're wrong? What do we think? All of that in today's Top Line. Gentlemen, start your engines.
That was really good.
If you're out there and you're thinking, what do Sam, AJ, and Asad know about Palantir? Well, up until this point, you'd be right. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. But here's the thing. Asad has a killer chief of staff. Asad is the man. And we put 40 hours of research into this to come up with something you all are going to love. Is that right, Asad?
That is it. That is it. And that's kind of where the show is going. Like, we'll have a major topic, and then that'll be something that we put 50 to 100 hours worth of research into. Maybe as the show gets bigger, there'll be a topic we do 1,000 hours of investigation and research into. And then the second half will be like news of the week.
Asa, do you think, based on your research, is Alex Karp the biggest liar in the history of tech?
I actually think he's pretty badass, by the way. The more I like...
Has he never been married? That's another question.
I don't think so. I think he's a single guy.
Yeah.
Single is kind of a very unconventional profile for a tech CEO, actually.
He's got that philosophy background. He was a teacher for a little while.
Yeah.
He's fluent in German, and he's very confrontational. He's conflict-oriented, which I guess is good that he serves the Department of War.
Department of War. It's a good name, by the way.
It's a good name. It was called the War Department when we founded the country. I don't know when they changed it to Defense.
Yeah, defense seems a little bit like defensive, and Department of War, like, oh, they've activated the Department of War. You're like, oh no, what a headache.
Well, I got a text over the weekend saying, do we listen to Smartless because this person likes our banter? Some people don't like our banter, but I say we should banter just a little bit. AJ, how are you?
I'm good. I'm still trying to recover. So last week I was at Inbound, and it was amazing. It was awesome. I'm sure in a future show we can talk about some of the insights. I shared it with you guys. But I took a red eye Friday night, and I hate red eyes. I listened to you, Sam. Sam, you said, do not eat anything and drink as much as you possibly can. I think that was your 2 pieces of advice. I did not drink though. I didn't eat
3 stiff drinks before you get on the plane and then go immediately to sleep.
Yeah. So I did that. I took a gummy of a certain variety, and I passed out for 4 to 5 hours. And I woke up thinking, I was like, okay, I beat the red eye. And then I came home and I passed out for 2 hours, and I'm still sluggish after 3 days. And so if you were out there
for 38 years of your life, you did not consume any of the things that were in that gummy, and then you're going to eat a gummy for the first few times in your life, you're going to have a bit of a hangover.
No, get out of here. I was okay. For those out there, I think I'm like this little sheltered dude or whatever.
He's probably gonna say it was a CBD gummy.
No, I'm not. It was a melatonin gummy, Sam. I'm just kidding.
Oh,
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. So I'm doing okay. I have a little bit of a lag and a hangover, but just like my internet and computer today for some reason. I don't know why it's not doing its thing. I'll get that figured out. But Austin, while I'm getting my life figured out, my computer figured out, how you doing?
I'm good. You know how we talk about it's unhealthy to wake up and look at your dashboards and all of that? I learned something today. It's only unhealthy when the dashboards don't show you good things. Like when the world's good, that's the best way to wake up. You wake up, you look at your dashboards for the company, things are going well, you look at your stock portfolio, you made some money, you're like, this is great. What a great day.
I was
Yeah.
on the phone with somebody over the last couple of weeks, and they were complaining about their financial situation. And they said, and the market's been down. I lost a lot of money in the market. And I'm just like, what market have you been in? Because
What have you invested into?
So I hear you on the portfolio stuff. I logged in. I'm like, that's nice.
This is good.
Look at that. Look at that.
I have all my money in 3 stocks: Reddit, Rubrik, and Google. And all 3 are doing really well. So I'm very happy.
I don't have all my money in 3 stocks, but I have loaded proportionally more money into Tesla.
Ooh, bullish on Tesla.
They're
Okay.
it looks like their Tesla, what's their ride sharing app that they have in Austin right now? They just launched it.
Robotaxi.
Yeah, Robotaxi. It's for the same price that it will cost you $15 in Uber. It was $2.34 for a Robotaxi, which is interesting. Yeah, we'll see.
I still
Look at
haven't
that.
ridden one. Did you ride a Waymo when you were in San Francisco, AJ?
Oh, absolutely. I love the Waymo. It's the best. It's by far the best way to get around. The Jaguar is soothing. It plays really nice music, and you just watch it do its thing, and you're like, "Where am I right now?" And this is awesome.
What's a Jaguar?
Yeah, Jaguar.
What's a Jaguar?
A car, a type of car, a Jag.
Jaguar?
A car.
Jaguar? Jaguar?
Oh my
When did this
goodness.
become Jaguar?
Get out of here. Get out of here. So Sam, when you said they love our
Are
banter,
Waymo Jaguars?
yeah.
Yeah, this isn't our best banter.
Sam is really excited to talk about Palantir.
I'm super optimistic today about this episode.
Sam cannot wait to
This
talk
is
about
great.
Palantir right now. He's so excited.
Let's give Sam what he's looking for. Let's give Sam some Palantir.
Give the people what they want. Palantir. Is Alex Karp the greatest CEO in the history of mankind? I'm just looking for shorts. I'm looking for clips.
Okay, let's get serious. Let's jump in. So we're here to talk about Palantir. Do they have sales? What do they do? Do they have salespeople? Why are they worth so much? Things of that nature. Just to frame the conversation a little bit, Palantir was founded in 2003. At the time, the US government was in the thick of the war on terror, and they had a very specific problem. They had data from a lot of different sources, but they didn't have the technology or the skills to be able to use that data to help them fight this fight. And so at the same time, Peter Thiel's team at PayPal had come up with some really interesting anti-fraud algorithms. And they thought, well, what if we build this out further, give it to the government, help them with this? And Peter Thiel's quote is, what if we took the best ideas of PayPal's anti-fraud systems and applied them to the problem of preventing terrorism without turning the US into a police state? From 2003 till 2010, their main focus was the government. But they then created a commercial division, which is just a B2B arm, and that's 45% of their revenue. So even though today when you hear Palantir, most people think, oh, defense contractor. I know for a fact one of the projects they're doing in the Middle East today is helping a big retail bank implement customer service AI. And so they have a pretty big B2B arm that does things like this. Palantir has always been a bit confusing to the tech ecosystem because as they were rising, there was this understanding or belief in tech that if you're selling software, it should be the customization that you offer should be minimal. Services revenue should be a low portion of your total revenue. And Palantir did the exact opposite. They would bundle software licenses into a ton of professional services. And specifically, they would embed their forward deployed engineers at the client site to not just help you implement the technology, but actually use the technology. And so to tech, this felt like a services company. And you could argue there was a pretty big services company type of feel to it. Through this approach, though, they found common threads. problems at different client sites that were big, and they thought we can build products around these. So that's how they've came up with the 4 main products that drive a lot of their revenue today. Gotham, great name, Foundry, Apollo, and AIP. Went public in 2020, stocks up 1,145% since then. Last 12 months up 400%. Revenue today is about 4 billion for the year. Year-over-year growth is 50%. They have re-accelerated post-AI. They're one of the benefactors of it. They're worth about 380 billion. And it's worth noting, and the 380 billion is 112x price to sales ratio. And the last thing is 50% of their stocks are owned by retail investors, whereas traditionally for a company like this, 80 to 90% of the stocks are owned by institutional investors. Sam, since you love Palantir and cover it so much, curious to get your thoughts on how Palantir has started owning so much mindshare in our ecosystem. For a long time, nobody really knew them. Then they were looked at as a pariah, as the services company trying to be a tech company. Today, everybody's inspired by them. AI companies, Decagon, we interviewed them last week. They have forward deployed engineers. Retail investors are buying their stock left, right, and center. Like, why do you think at a more macro, why do they own so much mindshare now?
I think they own so much mindshare because they have a charismatic CEO that says fun, controversial things on camera that can be edited into TikTok videos and YouTube shorts and Instagram reels. I think because they are executing on, according to them, putting AI into actual production. We've talked a lot about how the promise of AI is not meeting the reality of AI in most enterprise production environments, but I think Palantir is probably more successful than most at getting AI tools into actual operating environments and into production. I think 3 would be some kind of vibe shift, a cultural vibe shift related to Trumpism, actually, related to sort of like this dislocation or this separation between the right and the left, and the right feeling resurgent in terms of the power of the presidency, in terms of the Department of Defense becoming the Department of War, Palantir being very well positioned to take advantage of that, even as government spending is getting cut at a high level theoretically, although I don't actually think that's true based on, what I know of the big, beautiful bill. But they're typically, when you shed government workers, you need the demand for contractors and for outside resources increases because the work doesn't actually go down. And so a lot of times companies, including Salesforce, who I know, they have a bugaboo about Palantir, but as the size of the government staff contracts, there's actually like this inverse relationship to government spending oftentimes on outside contractors, which Palantir would benefit from. So, and I think, who knows why GameStop becomes a meme stock or any other stock. Sometimes things just capture the imagination. And I definitely think, again, when I think about All In and Chamath and Peter Thiel, I think there's a certain kind of libertarian, now conservative executive / expert that, again, is part of the overall pendulum swinging in our discourse. And I think guys like Alice Karp are emboldened. It's the same thing with Palmer Luckey and Anduril. I think that defense is a hot topic. I guess the last thing I'll say is, because I'm just dropping a lot of different ideas here, because I'm an expert. I study this company. I wake up thinking Palantir.
Could have been an analyst. Could have been a Palantir analyst.
Go to sleep thinking Palantir. Every waking moment is just tracking their market cap and their price to sales ratio. But I think we're also in this mode, I think it's a really interesting mode of the markets where software, a lot of the cursory software has been built, a lot of the stuff that doesn't require atoms, as they would say. And now we're in a moment where you got to put the software into stuff. And that's fueling a robotics revolution or evolution. That's fueling, companies like Palantir. That's fueling Anduril. That's fueling people building drones. And, I think like the world of hard science and software has intersected in a really interesting way at this particular moment.
Sam, the first point you made is about his communication style. And it feels like that these Mamdani is one example, like content for short form. Like Alex Scarp, I don't know how intentional it is, but everything he says is very clippable. And hence you can put it on YouTube shorts and you can put it on wherever short forms go and it blows up. How like it feels like that is such a necessary skill now for people to have, is like this ability to communicate not just like eloquently but sharply, like pointed perspectives, and say things in a way that short form video would work.
I agree with you 100%. Do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing?
I think it can be bad if you cater to it too much, right? Like, I think you need a balance. Like, it's probably really good that Alex Karp has things he goes into an interview and says that you can clip up. I saw a TBPN interview for 20 minutes that had 5 great clips in it. Like 5 great clips in 20 minutes is pretty great. But the 20-minute interview was pretty good as well. And then I read a New York Times profile on him, which was thousands of words. That was really good as well. And so I think it's like having a balance is important, and being good at all forms of it seems necessary. I think I've seen people that tilt too much in one direction, and they feel like they can become caricatures of themselves.
I mean, I think he's a person of substance. So let me not diminish him in that way. I think, to your point, we are in a world where the quality of ideas is being compressed, to its breaking point in terms of, should you elect a mayoral candidate who, when you examine their economic ideas, don't actually make any sense and don't illustrate how the government actually works, but they sound really good in a 90-second video? Well, we'll find out, I guess.
We'll find out.
But it's hard to lose money underestimating the stupidity of the American people, or anybody else for that matter. So, hopefully we'll see what happens. But I guess that's the reason I asked the question about the shorts, is because I think there's more to substance than just being pithy in a short. And that's why I'm not particularly bullish on Roy Lee or Cluley, because first of all, at some point you run out of the ability, but unless you're Mr. Beast, unless you're truly studying the algorithm and truly trying to figure out, how to exploit that into a repeatable motion. But if you just got lucky making a super cool viral video, I'm not sure that's a business strategy per se, but maybe I'm wrong.
AJ, so many founders have struggled over the years, especially when they've had products that require tons of customization to be deployed. I've spoken to so many who used to struggle to get investors to believe in them, to deploy money in these companies. At the time, selling into defense used to be something that was looked down upon. It didn't seem very investable. And then Palantir has kind of made it all work. And so what does it take to be able to be unconventional in such significant ways and still convince the world to back you? Like, is it that you can only really do this if you have a Peter Thiel behind you, founding the business or investing?
I was going to say it's the backing of PayPal here. So the one thing that I'll throw out there is that they've been around. This company isn't born yesterday. It's been around for 20 plus years. That lasting power, they've learned so much through that time, and they understand the US government. Back in January of this year, my sister-in-law, who doesn't really pay attention to software, and her husband said he doesn't use AI and will never touch it. They sent me an article from Alex talking about the connection to Trump. And I think a lot of this, what Sam was talking about in terms of meme stock, does hold true. My sister and brother-in-law have talked and cursed off software for years. And then all of a sudden they send me an article from the CEO of Palantir talking about this. That is a good microcosm of what's going on right now. And I just kind of have to laugh because I think Tesla had a lot of the similar pieces of it.
Mhm.
However, Tesla's tangible. You can see cars driving around. No one really understands what Palantir does. It can be anything for anyone. And especially when it's in the observability category. Can anyone that owns the stock name a competitor to Palantir? Probably not. Do they know who Datadog is? Maybe. but like that's something that I think about. I mean, Snowflake's a competitor too, right? So I think that's something that the average consumer, retail consumer, is looking at this and seeing all of the, oh, they're really tied to the administration. They have a lot of former White House advisors in their organization. This must be an up and to the right stock. I don't care what they do. They're getting $1 million contracts from the military. This is going to continue over the next 4 years. Their revenues will be $40 billion, and therefore future casting what their stock is going to look like.
It also feels like investors like to say, we like to find non-consensus bets. You have to be non-consensus bets and be right. That's how you win this game. But you can't be too non-consensus. Like there's limits to the non-consensusness that they're willing to back. Like you need to customize the product. That's too non-consensus. Like so, it's like within limits, which I find interesting. Okay, this is a good segue to the thing that I really want to discuss here, which is one of the things that I think gets the world excited about them is they go out and say that all of this success we've had, we haven't really needed to have much of a sales team to be able to achieve this. We're just a bunch of, they call themselves an artist colony full of engineers. And whenever somebody says that, I'm like, really? Like you are an artist colony full of engineers doing 4 billion in revenue? And we've heard other companies like Slack used to say, we don't need salespeople. We'll never need salespeople. So we said, okay, let's go look into this. And so we went and we analyzed their org. I don't think anyone's ever done this before. So this is fresh for our audience. This is what we found. Today, Palantir has 5,000 employees. In sales, only 2% of employees sit. So they do have salespeople. But when you compare that 2% to Google has 6, Microsoft has 9%. So it is a smaller sales team. So then we said, let's look into the broader go-to-market team. In BizDev, they have 21% of total employees in BizDev. And that compares to...
Asad. So meaning like they just don't call, there's a few people on LinkedIn that say, I'm in sales at Palantir. And there's a tremendous number of people, 1,000 people on LinkedIn that say, I'm in Palantir business development.
Or leverage. They call it leverage.
And that's a sales role. It's a sales role that's designated as a biz dev role because you're selling into government or whatever, but it's a go-to-market role. And that's 21% of the team. Microsoft, that's 4% of Microsoft's team and 4% of Google's team. If you take out marketing and just look at all of go-to-market, 24% of Palantir's team is go-to-market. Google is 11, Microsoft is 15. So for a company that says we're an artist colony of engineers, a lot of go-to-market people in this company. They have a CRO. They have tons of open sales roles. They have a rep view rating of 68.77%.
Love the rep view, by the way. Love the rep view. Just throwing that one in there. Also, they have the one other thing to add to this, Asad, is they have thousands of roles open, and yet they state that they want to shrink headcount by 15% over the next several years. How do you reconcile that?
I think that's interesting because what most people will say to you there is that it's because some roles will disappear and we'll double down on more. But I think the reality is probably the AI-based efficiencies are less available, but is a good narrative to share with the market. The thing I'm just really curious about is why certain companies feel such a need to say that we can do this without a sales team, without a go-to-market team. We've never really seen a company sit at the top of the S&P 500 that didn't have thousands of salespeople. Yet there's so many founders that take this. Slack is a good example. Sam, why does this happen over and over again? Why do they think they can do this without go-to-market, but they can't?
Because they hate salespeople.
Why?
They hate them.
Why so much hate?
Why?
They hate them because they think they're uninformed, technically illiterate liars that make stuff up and that force people to do things that they don't naturally want to do. And they have this uninformed perspective that the way that human beings, they have this two parts of their perspective. One is that the way true quality manifests in near subconscious intuitive decision making, meaning when you have a great product, you know how to use it, and you don't need to be sold or taught about it. That's one thing that people think. And, you can see that with Slack. Slack's so easy to use, this virality, we built it, product market fit, everybody just knows how to use it. What a beautiful product. And then the second thing is they think that they've built things that these dumb salespeople don't really understand and can't explain, and they get annoyed and frustrated that they are dependent on a group of people that they think are inferior to them. And you can see it over and over again. We talked about Gary Tan's now deleted tweet saying, why does it matter that the salespeople got screwed over? The engineers all got paid out when Windsurf was acquired by OpenAI, and who really cares about the salespeople? You see it, to your point, Asid, Stuart Butterfield for a long time talking about how Slack didn't have salespeople, didn't need salespeople. I hear it from founders every day complaining about salespeople. And so I think it's just this remnant that, like, there's this class of stupid, uninformed idiots that we all are dependent on for our livelihood, meaning revenue generating go-to-market people, and they resent that. And I think, and that's the challenge. That's the challenge that all the three of us have, explaining what sales really is. Explaining that it actually is listening and problem solving. Explaining that nobody gives a crap about your cool new technology. It needs to solve actual problems, and salespeople are often the translation layer between the customer, who has a very real need, and whatever stupid thing you built that you think is so cool that nobody cares about. So I think that there's this podcast, and the Pavilion community, and all of this work is really about trying to help people understand, I think, a couple of things. And one of them is that revenue generation is a team sport, and you cannot do this team without salespeople. And that's because humans want to talk to other humans, and that's only going to become more and more true. That's why I love, this comment that this statistic that you often correct, Asid. I think it was, Gartner or Forrester saying, like, the X% of people don't want to talk to a salespeople. And it's just such BS, because that the number of people that buy without a salespeople have a much higher incidence of regret. And you also know that every time you call whatever service you want to use and talk to, you want to immediately talk to a human being, because we don't trust the AI. We don't trust the push to do this. Do you want your account balance? No, I want to issue a wire, you piece of...
I want a human.
Citibank sucks.
That's like Jon Stewart and Arby's. I just love that Citibank comes back every now and then.
So I think people hate salespeople. I don't think it's fair. I think they are often revealed to be liars, as you point out, Asid. I think humans want to buy from other humans. They need things explained. And I think salespeople perform a critical function. Obviously, that's why we all need to hire them.
We used to run this competition called the Great Canadian Sales Competition. And we went around, we wanted more people to choose sales as a career path out of university. And so this was the largest national student competition in Canada at the time, thousands of students taking part across like 60, 70 campuses. And we would go and give these talks. And in one of the talks, we had all the sponsors, Google, Shopify, etc., on this slide. And we would say, put your hands up if you recognize these companies. And we would just show the companies that had a B2C element to them. So we would put Google there, we would put Amazon there, etc. And 100% of the class would put their hands up. And then we would show them the B2B companies and put your hands up if you recognize these. And maybe in a classroom of 52 people would put up their hands. And I think what that was telling me in a way is how much of your view is just developed early on from the experiences you have. They've interacted with they only knew certain companies because those are the ones they'd interacted with. Their impressions of salespeople, when we would talk to them about the career path, were the people that would knock on your door. Me in my university days, knocking on your door, selling you something, you walking into a retail store, being sold something. That's a very that forms your opinion of sales. Then you go around the economy in your early days, and you hear of like the steak dinners and the more, I think, the slimy sort of sales. And you just think all of it is that. But it is so much more than that, right? Like, it is so much more than that. But that is the prevalent opinion. It makes things like Pavilion so important, because it is a community that is looked at a certain way, but is probably to me, the most important part of the ecosystem. You don't get revenue without these people.
No, you don't. I mean, it's just an us first them tribalism. Like I said, revenue generation is a team sport. We need all of the pieces of a company to fit together to grow and to make money and to be successful. And like I said, Alex Karp is a liar. If You said 20. So give us the stats again, because it is also very, very cheeky that business development is thought to be sales
Yeah, dude.
in most
That's the
corners of the
salesperson right
world.
there. Just, you know why it stood out to me? So the narrative is we're an artist colony of engineers. Basic. That is the narrative. I think there's a quote where he said, "We'll hire salespeople over my dead body." Like there's like that type of a quote there. And so the reason it stood out to me is our team builds enterprise sales teams for a bunch of companies, and they compete with Palantir at the offer process so often. Like so often, my team's like, man, we're one-on-one against Palantir right now. It's like, well, Palantir is hiring lots of enterprise salespeople. We know this. We're competing against them. And so it's like, well, how can you say this? And so here's the stat. They say we are no salespeople. Actually, go-to-market is 24% of their 5,000 employees. And for Google, it's 11. For Microsoft, it's 15. They have more people in go-to-market than other tech companies that say we have go-to-market teams. That's the big number. And then when you click into it, the way they've categorized it is 2% of the employees sit in sales, and 21% of them sit inside business development.
I remember sitting in Austin and interviewing sellers from SolarWinds. We all know SolarWinds.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a couple people that showed up, and I remember hearing how the new business sales team was treated versus the engineers. On Friday, they had catered food. Sales was always allowed to go to the line first, ahead of everyone. In fact, they could jump the line. There were engineers that were in line, you literally could jump, because so it was so that they could go back to their seats and be as productive as possible ahead. And I think a lot of this stems from these types of cultures that exist. In a lot of ways, that's the type of seller that comes into an organization and feels like they're owed. And I assume the CEOs that have this distaste for sales have just come across really bad salespeople over the years. And therefore, they've met really good salespeople, but they don't think of them as salespeople. They've met CEOs. They've met CROs.
Here's one way to think about this. They tell the world, as do many companies, we haven't needed salespeople. This billions of dollars of revenue is because we have great products and customers love us, etc. Slack was the same, Calendly too. Okay. But at the same time, they have salespeople, they have a CRO, they have a bunch of open roles, all of this. To the marginal next customer in the market, if you hear that a company has been able to achieve all of this without needing salespeople because their product is so good, you're like, product must be the best in the world, right? So it's a little bit attractive to the customer. That's an advantage. The supposed disadvantage is great salespeople will not want to work for you. Do you think that's true? Do you think salespeople care?
Do they care about whether
that this company has this view that says we don't need salespeople?
No, in fact, I think they actually would like it, because if they are there at doing sales and they're not viewed as sales, they don't have sales in their title, and they're one of like a few, and so therefore they get their choice. I mean, salespeople are needed for they're really good about saying, hey, let me map this org, let me do an account mapping and understand what the problem to solve is, what the jobs to be done are, and where there's opportunity within their organization to expand this and quadruple the account. And if they can go in and help solve the problem, the customer doesn't care, because as a solution, that seller is going to ultimately win. I actually would say that they probably look at it as a badge of honor. I joined Atlassian, I joined Calendly, I joined a PLG company, Slack, whatever it was, and built the enterprise go-to-market motion to commercial success. Slack had a massive sales team. I know this. I knew sellers at Slack, and I guarantee they absolutely loved it because they had a product that their companies loved, and all they had to do, anyone would pick up the phone. It's like doing sales at Google. The other side of it, though, Austin, is that these companies are product led. So eventually, as a seller, you get tired of it. Why? Because your commission's not going to be as high. They're ultimately going to figure that out. And there's like a run up, and then it kind of plateaus. And that run up growth is like the time to join. So that 2 to 3 years that you're there, it's amazing. Afterwards, it's like, oh, nostalgia about the glory days and what it was like 2 or 3 years ago. It's not the same.
Yeah, I hear you on the PLG company side. This is obviously a sales-led growth team, though. Like, this isn't PLG. This is sales-led
No,
growth. It's
this is
just
super
positioning
enterprise.
itself the way traditionally
Yeah.
PLG companies have positioned themselves, which I
Because
think is
who's going to fill out the RFPs for this? Who? The CEO? Like
They
the
have forward
engineers?
deployed. They have forward deployed proposal writers. I think that's what they call them.
Yeah, but is that who's doing it? Is the forward deployed RFPs writers? What? Get out of here.
I'm telling you,
Quit making
they,
this up. There's no way.
they have some
This is why it's a meme
hilarious
stock, by the
titles,
way. You
dude.
put forward deployed in front of anything, and everyone's going to be like, let's forward deploy it.
deployed across your face.
Okay. It wasn't forward deployed, but this is a great title: Capture and Proposal Strategist.
Oh
That's
man, I
our
love that.
Fine.
Let's
so he's
do
good
it.
at
Let's
branding.
go.
That's what
Let's
he's good at
go.
branding. One reason that they're valued like a very good, the best software company is because they have software like characteristics. And I think we've talked about that a lot recently. Yeah. What is the value of services revenue? They have 80% gross margins and they have roughly 30%, it's like 27% operating margins. That's software statistics. I think the other part, to the point of like, why is services revenue more in favor now? Because whether it's forward deployed or backwards deployed, wherever it's deployed, it helps create recurrence. When you have somebody working on the client team and you can afford it, you get 120%, 130% net revenue retention, you get 90% gross retention. So I think the reason that Palantir is so fashionable, one of them is because it challenges our ideas about the nature of scalability when it comes to the design of an organization.
Last thing I want to share with you guys that connects to this is as much as they say this about go-to-market, I do think they're one of the more progressive go-to-market orgs in the market. And I really do understand what good go-to-market looks like. So here's something that has been a big driver of their high win rate on deals. They compete with two types of companies on deals. In some deals, they're competing with the Accentures of the world. I gave you guys an example of they're at a big bank, helping them with AI and customer support right now. That's a services type of contract. And then they'll compete in other cases with the Datadogs and the Snowflakes, etc. And so they said, on one side, you have these companies that want to do long pilots. And on the other side, you have these services companies that want to spend 6 months doing a needs analysis, market analysis, presentation after presentation, etc. When they see a RFP or they get the bad signal from a client that we have a need, they basically try to move into what is a 5-day workshop. And in this workshop, they send a bunch of engineers as well. And what they try to do is at the end of those 5 days, they have developed some sort of prototype that you can touch, feel, and use. And if you think about vibe coding, they were kind of vibe coding before there was vibe coding. They were literally giving you this thing. And the insight was that tech usually cares about time to value after a deal has been signed. With the time to value way that we understand it is that you sign a deal and it's the set of things you do within a certain amount of time that correlate with low churn, high NRR, etc. And they're like, well, let's just bring maximum value before we even sign something with these customers. And that led to a really high win rate. And it feels like, our firm, we're trying to think of this a lot, is like, how do we give more value before somebody signs? It feels like that's where the market is moving a little bit, right, Sam?
Yeah. I mean, I love that approach for sure. And I think that that's part of, I was just thinking about that, Asad, because the new hot title on LinkedIn, Upwork, Fiverr, like the contractor places, is vibe coding cleanup specialist. Because there's all these people like, yeah, vibe coding is going to create terrible code. Let me come in and fix it and make it workable for you so that can actually go into production. So I mean, that is the benefit of the concept of a forward deployed engineer. The idea of we're actually just going to build it and show you that it works, particularly in the enterprise where I'm sure people are used to things taking forever and never really making it into production in the right way. And I think that is a differentiator. And I think Palantir, in a way that probably is similar to PayPal and similar to other Peter Thiel organizations, and again, Anduril, is there's probably a confidence and a swagger that comes from those workshops of saying everybody else is doing it wrong. I'm going to do it right. Watch me now.
Yeah. And there's also now a swagger of I'm a Palantir customer. You know,
Yeah.
like you don't get fired for having McKinsey or IBM. There's a little bit of swagger now that you're using Palantir.
Asad, how many customers does Palantir have?
Less than 1,000, more than 700.
So this is, if you think about that and break it down so it's 25 years old. I mean, they're really just adding like 20, 30 customers a year.
I heard the CFO say the FTE model doesn't work unless you have an 8-figure contract.
Well, I mean, it goes back. The question is, you mentioned that this is like the best go-to-market team or whatever case. What are we measuring them off of?
I'm not saying they're the best. I do think they are progressive in how they think about it. Like, I think the workshop is really progressive because I know the services world really well. If you look at all the leading consulting firms, McKinsey, Bain, BCG, Booz Allen, all of them, there are 2 teams in that entire ecosystem that do growth-focused projects on outcome-based pricing models. Just 2 teams. One dude who ran a team out of Spain for a firm, the other one out of London. The London guy lives in Dubai, the Spain guy is in New York now. There were just 2 teams in that whole thing. And so the Palantir approach was very disruptive against something like Accenture, something like McKinsey. And I think against even the tech players, a 5-day workshop versus a 6-month pilot is very interesting. I don't think they're the best go-to-market team in the world by far.
Great conversation. Thanks, everybody, for listening to Top Line, episode 127. Please subscribe to us. Give us 5 stars on Spotify, podcast, iTunes, smash subscribe on YouTube, yada, yada, yada. Thanks very much for listening, everybody. We'll talk to you next week.
See you at go-to-market.
See you at go-to-market.
GTM.
GTM.
Let's go.